So I'm going to share with you today what we are doing at Electrolux using consumer insights to increase brand advocacy. And I am the CXI manager at Europe in Electrolux. And I'm going to use this one here to make sure that I click on the next screen. So a few words about Electrolux. Like Camilla said in the introduction, we're celebrating 100 years today. But you may know Electrolux, we shape living for the better by reinventing taste, care, and well-being experiences, making life more enjoyable and sustainable for millions of people. I'm not sure if you maybe have an Electrolux product at your house. Raise your hand if you do. Great. Perhaps AG, which is also perfect. Zanussi, which is another one. Not so many, yeah. And there are some people from America here, so perhaps you also have a Frigidaire? Yeah, perfect. Basically, so we have a few brands where we're 60 plus million products that we produce and in 150 markets. So we're a global company, and we are headquartered in Stockholm in Sweden. And the business was started in 1919, and so we're celebrating the 100 years this year. So you probably heard a lot of commercials and information about Electrolux. We have an Electrolux 100 range that we are launching this year, and so we're very proud of that. You probably hear some ads around that. So as far as the agenda, in this agenda, it's really these topics that I will talking about on how we are using consumer insights to increase this brand advocacy. And some food for thoughts here. We heard Adam talking about it a little bit earlier, but it's very true. 77% of all brands could disappear and people wouldn't care. Of course, it's very scary for us as a huge corporation to read. And what are we going to do to make sure that we are not one of those companies who disappear? And so using NPS to measure advocacy is sort of one of the key things to do. And we're very proud of having this program with CustomerGauge. So Voice of the Consumer program is key for driving improvements and increased advocacy. So at Electrolux, we have these four, I would say, source types where we bring information from the voice of the consumer. The first one is surveys. In surveys, we use the NPS surveys. We also use customer effort score. And we have also the star ratings, so the product ratings. But we also use social listening. So we go in and we go out and listen to what people talk about us, what they say about us, in Facebook, in Twitter, or even on forums. And contact center, we are, so Electrolux, we don't only provide products, we have a service organization where people can call if they have questions, if they have a problem. We have service technicians to go out and fix if it's needed. And so with contact center, we hear a lot of information, what the consumers are asking for. They can complain, etc. So we're tapping into that area as well. We're calling it voice to text. So any recorded conversation could be something that we're tapping into to understand what they're talking about. And then the test labs. So we have, at Electrolux, we have locations where we bring in consumers to try out and test products that are not on the market yet. So what they can do is, be in a kitchen and doing their thing, and we're monitoring them. We're seeing where they're putting their eyes, their eye movements, the facial expressions, questions they may ask during the session, and then we have some question afterwards. And that is the type of the data we also want to tap into. But today, we're focusing mainly on surveys and social listening. In fact, 90% of the Voice of the Consumer program comes from surveys. And social listening then is 10%. So we have a little bit more to do and further to go, but I think we're on a really good track. So our strategy is to move to the top level of the Voice of the Consumer ladder, and by 2020, we want to reach there. And what you can see here on the ladder, we started in 2011, and this is when we joined the partnership with CustomerGauge. So it's quite a long time ago. And at that point, we signed or launched 2 surveys. And after that, the program has grown into the collectors and analyzers. And in 2018, we moved into the collaborators. So I'll talk about a little bit about that and also how we're going to reach the 2020 goal. So the surveys that we have today, like I said, 90% of our Voice of the Consumer program comes from surveys. So basically, the surveys that we have are mainly transactional. That means that a survey is triggered after a specific event with us. So we have different touch points where we are engaged with the consumer. So as you can see, the consumer is in the middle in this journey. And then when they're interested in perhaps purchasing a product, they may go into our brand website to get inspired, to understand what is there, what is coming, etc. And at that point, we can touch base with them. We can ask them, what did you think about our website? What can we do to improve it, etc. Then we move into discovery selection. And then when it comes to purchase, we actually don't sell directly to the consumer. So we rely on our retailers to sell our products. So we have a little bit of a gap here. But then again, in the onboarding, once the product is purchased, we move into onboarding. And those consumers who register with us, we can tap into there and ask them questions about what they think about the whole onboarding, which is the first 90 days of using your product. So it would include delivery, installation, setup and configuration. And now with these connected appliances being on the market, it's being more and more difficult to get, the setup right and the connection. And so there's quite a few questions that are coming up in this stage or in this first 90 days. Then the ongoing use is a few years, and then at some point there might need to be a repair. And so when a service technician has visited the house of the consumer to fix the appliance after such event, we will send a survey. So what I'm saying is that each touch point, so we're covering basically almost every stage of this journey, in the consumer journey. And we have 2 relational surveys, and the remaining ones are transactional surveys. And so we're using CustomerGauge to collect or to manage these surveys and to collect the data from the consumer. And all of these dots are basically representing when such a survey can be triggered. So there's quite a lot of them, as you can see. What we have done then is, as we're plotting all of these dots around the consumer journey, we have plotted then in different levels. I mean, if we look at Europe, for instance, we can see that there are in certain touch points where the consumer is more happy with the experience and feel that they want to recommend us them more. But in other touch points, they may recommend us less. And as you can see, there is quite obvious where we need to improve. But of course, this is different depending on which market we're talking about, which brand we're talking about. So if we look at two our major brands, and see there is a little bit of a difference, and perhaps there is one brand we should focus on more than the other brand, especially if they're premium. So we are able to do that type of analysis. So we have identified the experience in each consumer touch point. We have the analysis by brand, which is really important because it's the brand advocacy we want to drive. And we have identified priority touch points that will impact the return on investment the most. So for instance, now you can see that there are some touch points that are a little bit lower, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the touch point that we should fix, because maybe this is not the touch point that brings the most ROI. Now, I can't share that data with you right now, but we're doing that type of analysis. And so what we're doing now is for 2018, in 2017 or 16, 17, we started thinking about how can we move to that next level in 2018, which is called the collaborators. And what we did is we decided that we found that there were great opportunities investing in a text analytics tool, because we needed to get those actionable insights. NPS is measuring the trend, we can see if it's good or bad, but we needed to get into that little bit more detailed step to make it more actionable. And so what we found is we looked at the three opportunities that we saw by investing in this tool was we needed to go from analyzing the data in silos. So like I mentioned, we had each touch point we can measure how are we doing. But if we look at the big picture, what should we focus on then when we bring it all together? Also, we were lacking that big data text analytics. We needed to tap into the comments from the consumer, because in the survey we also asked them, what can we do to improve? And we got a really good feedback here that we really needed to sort of help get categorized and understood a little bit better. So we moved away from lacking that to sort of have to read them sort of one by one into a more structured way. And also the manual reporting that we did was before quite labor intensive, and it was slow to market. So what we did was we said, we want to make sure that we can bring it all in a dashboard, so we can look at the NPS and how it goes up and down, the trends of that, but also the root causes of it, based upon the comments from the consumer. And we wanted to make that data available anytime, anywhere, so that a top manager can, before they go into the meeting, they can go, okay, this is where I'm at, great. This is what we need to do. So the process for transforming that feedback into insight is really a three-step process. So the first step here that I have in the picture is really what we have been doing. So we were just continuing. So we continue to collect the data in the different repositories. And you can see here we have lots of NPSs. We also have, for instance, social media, which is another voice of the consumer. We have product reviews, etc. Well, what we're doing is we're taking all that data, we're feeding it into a data lake. So at the company we have a data lake which brings all this data together. And then we're pushing it to an engine which doing that categorization and sentiment analysis on that text data, and then spitting it out in dashboard. We call them the role-based dashboard or the organizational-based dashboards. And then presenting that data in an actionable format and anytime, anywhere. Now, the data lake is quite important because it's not only the voice of the consumer that we store here. In fact, it's many other data like sales numbers and operational KPIs. So by bringing all that data together, we can do quite of a analysis that I'll talk about in the next step. But with what we've done then to move that into the level 4, we said that why don't we create 3 dashboards? Because, like I mentioned, we're we have products. We want to know what consumers think about our products in general, dishwashers, ovens, etc. But we're also very concerned about an understanding around the service, because in the past, we were more of a manufacturing company. We produced the products and then we did like this. Great, now they're sold, great. But of course, we want to be in contact with the consumer, and if they have questions, we have an engagement with the consumer more and more. So the service becomes very important, not only to fix the problem, but also to engage and understand, but maybe we can help you, maybe there's a product and maybe we can help you. So we have a service dashboard as well. And then we have an online experience dashboard. And the online experience dashboard is looking at our brand website, where you get inspired. But we also have a web shop. So the web shop is an aftermarket web shop where you can buy consumables and accessories and also spare parts. So also this journey needs to be intuitive and easy to do. So these are the 3 dashboards that we have created, where we can see the NPS with the text analytics and the outcome of that. And this is what that looks like. This is a snapshot from the tool, from the dashboards. And I believe this is the product experience dashboard. And what we can see here is really 2-dimensional. On the y-axis, you can see the NPS. And on the x-axis, you can see the sentiment. And each bubble represents the topic. And the bigger the bubble, the more volume. So what we can see here is, and also the red area represents, this is where we want to fix, and the green area represents this is where we want to be, maintain. The red area is marked from the 0 of the NPS and also from the 0 of the sentiment analysis, because these are really crucial. We need to fix anything that's in this area. So what we can find here is there is a malfunction. If you have a malfunction, obviously you're not very happy. You give probably a low advocacy score, but you will probably also say a few words, bad quality or whatever. And so it's very natural that bubble ends up in the red area here. So we can click on that bubble and we can find out more about the comments and what are the actions behind it, the details behind it. For instance, what brand is it? What's the PNC, which is the sort of identification of that product. So we can look at those details. So what we want to do is we want to take bubbles and move them from the red area to the green area. But in this case, because it's a malfunction, it probably will never move to the green area. So what we want to do is just shrink it so it disappears. But another bubble, as you can see in the gray area, it's a blue bubble, and it's the controls display. That bubble, we would like to move to the green area. We want them to talk a lot about this topic, but really positively with a high score in NPS. So this is how we're sort of moving into driving those root causes to the right area and understanding what we need to do. Then what we do after we have what the CXI team does, okay, so we collect the data from the consumer, we analyze the data, and then we bring it to a silver platter, or actually we socialize the data to the right people in the organizations, actually those who drive operations, because we are not making the changes, but we need to be very clear on what it is that needs to be fixed for us to increase NPS, because at the end, once we make these changes, we want NPS to increase. And so here are some examples of some negative topics. I mean, we work, for instance, with a service organization. So first visit resolution. Of course, the consumer wants a broken appliance to be fixed at the first time the technician is there. And the repair cycle time. You don't want to wait 3 weeks for a technician to be there. You want it to be done quite quickly. So we have seen that these are two areas that we're working on, and we're communicating that very clearly to the service organization. Now, of course, we also have the user manual, and video content is something that we have found that consumers really want. Typically, when you open the box and you bought your oven, you may throw the user manual in a corner or even throw it in the trash. Seems like some people do that. And then they go, wait a minute, maybe I have a question here. There's the steam oven, how did I do this now again? And there are some questions. So providing content around that is quite important. When it comes to the product development organization, of course, they're very interested in the next launch, let's say the Electrolux 100 range. We don't want to make the same issues that we have in existing ovens or in existing dishwashers. We need to remove those. So one is the controls display that I showed you earlier, but also if you look at a refrigerator, there's a noise issue. So we really need to take care of that. Sales and marketing organization, we're working, even though we're part of marketing, but we're not part of the operational marketing. So the operational sales and marketing, they are, for instance, working on product registration, making sure that that's simpler to do so that we can have more people to engage with. We want them to register the products. But also finding the right accessory to the appliance that they have bought. So there are very many topics that we are socializing with the operational part of the organization. Now moving to level 5, that is what we want to do by 2020. And so what does it mean? So we're saying that we want to link consumer insight to operational data and processes and strategic planning throughout the company. So we already started looking at some of our operational KPIs. So now we have the data lake in place, so we can pick and choose. And so we can say, okay, let's see if we can see any correlations between NPS and something else. So this is the first step. And I'll show you a slide around that. But then we also want to tap into the predictiveness. So learning from the past, seeing pattern, identifying pattern, and then do the predictive part. So here are two, I think I mentioned it earlier on the slide, but the repair cycle time is the time it takes for the technician to fix the appliance after it's broken. So it's actually the time it breaks until it's fixed. So the consumer will call, maybe the contact center, book a service technician, and we can see that there is a negative relationship to NPS. That's quite natural. We kind of knew that, but it's interesting to see that we can, by data, see that correlation. So as the repair cycle time goes up, meaning it takes more days, the advocacy goes down. And similarly, what we can do is we can look at first visit resolution. Well, most people want that resolution to be done right then and there when the technician is there. But if the technician didn't bring all the spare parts, all the right parts, or didn't understand what really was wrong from the phone call, then they may need to return on another day. And most consumers find that very agonizing, because then may have to take time off from work and etc. for another day. So here we see that it's a positive relationship, that when the first visit resolution goes up, meaning percent, maybe, of course 100%, then advocacy also goes up. So these are the types of plotting of data and correlations that we can see now with operational data and the emotional data from NPS. And so like I said, we're working on these details. So we're taking actions with the operational parts of the organization, and then we continue to measure. So the CXI team is involved at all times. So we can actually see that within the service organization, in the last 4 years, we're doing quite well. We're making progress, and of course, we need to track all the time. Are we doing the right thing? And here is what I was talking about, the service repair. And we can see that in warranty and out of warranty, they're separated because there is a difference. In warranty, you don't pay as a consumer, but out of warranty, you do. So you're typically a little bit lower in the advocacy, but at least both of them are going up. And so using consumer insights to deliver simply outstanding consumer experience is what we're doing. And so we're definitely on our way. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some past and current challenges. So we don't sell directly to the consumer, so we're missing out a little bit here. So we have to have a really tight relationship with the retailers. And also, we're unable to impact the full consumer experience because we're also not necessarily there in, the delivery, for instance. We're not part of the delivery. We don't deliver the product. And sometimes there can be dents, there can be issues with the product in the delivery. So we're sort of not fully owning the journey. So this is a little bit of a challenge. Also, I would say in some contact centers, they're also using independent service providers, meaning it's not our staff answering the call. And in some locations also in Europe, we are using independent service providers to fix the appliance as well. But from the way we work internally, so the first two bullets are more external challenges, and the last two bullets are more internal challenges, where we know that internal stakeholders, we feel that sometimes they're working in silos. One example is product development. Feel like as long as we produce a perfect product, it will be great and no questions. But there's always questions and engagement. Even if it's really intuitive, there's always something that you want to make sure that you understand correctly. So there's more to it than just a perfect product. So we're trying to make sure that gap doesn't exist by sort of bringing it all together. When it comes to tools and training engagement with the internal stakeholders, we found that has been quite low, and we felt like it's been very much spoon feeding. But now more and more they are understanding we're slowly getting their engagement to make it easier to go into the tool and find the information. Now when we bring it all together, not only from an NPS perspective, but also the root causes being very actionable. And so on the last slide, I want to just say that it is a success program. The voice of the consumer has been a success at Electrolux. We started in 2011. We are moving up the ladder of the maturity, voice of the consumer maturity. And I think it's a global voice of the consumer program. I think we've been a little bit more active from a Europe perspective. But we're definitely active in North America, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. And we also have the buy-in to our C-level people in the organization because they believe that it communicates success. We need to see where we're going. So they have going away from only putting the EBIT or the revenue. They're also putting NPS in the report as an important KPI, also in the report presentations brought by our CEO. In our quarterly business reviews, which I'm very proud of. We also have the digital signage. We have the screens in our production units in the factories, so everyone can feel that they are engaged and that they are part of this program. We have it in our sales offices and also in our headquarters. And then there's also the tools training, so the investments of having these tools available for the data to be really close to the people who need it. That's it.